Hey everybody, TacticAngel back on the PlayStation 5 for another ship review in World of Warships Legends. Today we'll be talking about the Ark Royal. For this review, we'll start with a general overview before looking at the stats and then getting into some gameplay. If you're looking for the history of Ark Royal though, please check out the description for a link to that, as well as chapters for this video. As for Ark Royal in-game, you might expect something like how Independence min-maxes dive bombers more than Ranger, or how Zuiho does the same but with torpedo bombers over Ryujo. There's an element of truth to that, in this case with carpet bombers. The thing is that you don't quite pick up as many vulnerabilities as you might expect, and in some ways Ark Royal is even more well defended than Furious. As far as her strengths, it's pretty easily in the bombers. Each flight has a maximum of 9 Fairy Swordfish that drop 3 at a time with 6 bombs per plane. The chances that 18 bombs straddle your target is pretty low, and if you're proficient with the ship, you can pretty reliably drop destroyers. Your torpedo bombers are also Swordfish that drop 1 each for a total of 3 torpedoes. Like other British torpedoes, the spread narrows until they actually are fully aimed, so the torpedoes actually will get closer to each other the further they travel, which means if you've got the right target, you can put a lot of damage in one place at one time. The nice thing is that you do have a lot of both of these types of planes to work with, starting with a full deck of 18, with competitive or fast regen depending on the plane. The downsides to this are that the individual bombs that you're dropping do less damage and don't have particularly great penetration when compared to other dive bombers, or even the Furious. Similar to the British tech tree carrier, the torpedoes are slow, and similar to the bombs, do comparatively less damage. Though in both cases, if you hit all of your bombs or all of your torpedoes, Ark Royal will do more damage to most targets. Then, unfortunately, you currently have the greatest unmodified visibility of any carrier at the tier, which means that particularly on small maps, you might be relatively easy to see. People who are going to like Ark Royal are those folks out there who like Furious already, or who are just close enough to imagine they might enjoy Furious on easy mode. And that's basically how I'd describe Ark Royal in general. It's the easy mode Furious. You're still going to have to get used to how carpet bombing works, and the laughably slow torpedoes represent a bit of a learning curve and will always give your targets more time to get out of the way. But if you get over that hurdle, Ark Royal is still quite good, even after the rework. As we jump into stats, we will mention here and there how she compares to Furious, and as always, the stats that you see on screen should be unmodified, hopefully. Hard to say when this thing has been out for 2 years. In terms of survivability though, Ark Royal is a relatively healthy girl with 44,500 hit points. That's just 400 shy of the Ranger, which has the highest at the tier. Looking at her armor scheme, it's pretty much 10 on the island, 19 everywhere else, and then a 144mm belt. It's worth mentioning that even Scharnhorst overmatches 19mm of armor, so if you're getting hit by a battleship, all this green stuff is probably going to arm most of the shells that hit you, and you won't bounce anything. The interior surfaces of this incomprehensible citadel are 89 on the vertical surfaces and 30 on the top. And I would say the best way to think about this is whatever happens when you get shot, you shouldn't be too surprised. It's not uncommon for this ship to take very little damage, and it's not uncommon to take a citadel either. That's not surprising for most carriers, and no one will feel sorry for you when it happens. The one surprisingly good stat here is that the torpedo defense sits at 25%. That's surprisingly good because all of her peers at the tier have 0, except for Zuiho, that has 4. Your offensive complement are all string bags, aka the Fairy Swordfish. You start with 18 of each type on deck, which is 4 full flights. The 1900 HP isn't very high on either the torpedo or so-called dive bombers here, being basically a C+ and a C- respectively, but that also means they're not really low either. The torpedo bomber restoration time is average, but with 18 of them on deck from the start, that gives you torpedo bombers per match, similar to Zuiho if you want it. The 32-second restoration you have on your dive bombers is about 5 seconds better than average, and similarly puts you a couple planes behind Independence for largest dive bomber air group 2. Don't be fooled though, these aren't dive bombers, they're carpet bombers, dropping 6 bombs per plane, and with 22% on the fire chance. That's low on a per bomb basis, but easily the highest overall chance to set 1 or more fires per drop. If you're dropping with 3 bombers, that's 18 chances at 22%, minus the fire resist of your target. They do struggle against heavily armored targets to do actual damage, but you don't have to do damage to start fires, and damage over time is the name of the game in Ark Royal. You can follow that up with even more damage over time with your torpedo bombers. These also drop in a 3x3 arrangement, and with converging torpedoes, they offer you the chance to land a lot of damage on targets if you're confident in your aim. The bad news here is that at 35 knots, you might find these a bit unusable against targets that aren't battleships. The average destroyer is faster than these out of the gate, and almost all of them are faster with a speed flag. Cruisers are a bit more hit and miss, so if you want to spec into torpedoes on Ark Royal, I'd say off the top you're taking the road less traveled, but you definitely want to do something to increase the speed of these even just a little bit. For defensive armament, the Ark Royal has a surprisingly decent secondary battery. Certainly the best among the premium tier 5 carriers right now. At 4.5 kilometers, that's as far as any of them can shoot, and with 16 guns you have a lot of chances to hit. The 5-second reload is decent, and we'll just say this to our DD players out there, this is one of the carriers you probably don't want to get too close to if you're low on HP. But the Ark Royal players out there would be well advised not to count on these. Your other defensive stat, AA, is also pretty good. In terms of rating, the game gives you the best of the tier 5 carriers, but that doesn't translate to highest damage. You're getting that rating because 71 DPS at 5 kilometers is both overall good range and damage for long range AA. You've got another 119 at 2.5, which is probably when you're already looking to take damage, and then you can cap this off with some legacy World War I water-cooled 50 caliber machine guns, which are basically worthless. This is very similar to Furious's arrangement, with just a bit more long-range DPS and a lot less of these useless short-range guns. Ark Royal's maneuverability is nothing to write home about. 31 knots is just fine, but her turning circle is about 70 meters wider than average, and she's just a bit slow with her rudder. None of this is really catastrophic, but overall you could categorize the maneuverability as not good. That also is likely to be a bit more of a problem on account of your high visibility, which is 400 meters worse than average, and inches out Ranger is currently the worst at the tier. She's also most visible by air, and I guess you could say that's the price for having a good air group. Alright, with all that out of the way, we're going to get into some gameplay. We're going to be on straight, and obviously you can see as the game gets started, I'm staring long and hard at the map just to see what sort of enemy ships we have on the other team. Once we're done with that, we'll go ahead and put my commander up on the screen. There are a couple important things here. The first of which is that I'm much more interested in my dive bombers, which is why you can see in the third slot I have a little bit extra HP for them. And then in our fourth slot, we have additional fire chance. Now, since that's calculated on a per bomb basis, and I drop 18 bombs at a time, you're getting a lot of value out of that, and you can say this comes near as anything that I say comes to a recommendation. It's a good skill for this ship. In any case, we scout over the middle. You see we've dropped some airplanes and boosted out of the range of the enemy fighters. We're going to immediately start trying to deal out damage over time. We get a fire on that battleship, the Mutsu, and we're circling the wrong way around because we're considering whether or not we want to go for the cruiser, but it looks like Mutsu did put out that fire, so maybe we can give him some long-term fun. Looks like we got one there. So he'll be burning for quite some time. And in the meantime, we can go and try to spread the love. Here we've got torpedo bombers. Since we have both torpedo bombers and dive bombers, or carpet bombers, starting with, 18 and 18, we're getting these off the deck just so we can start their regeneration. We'll probably lose one or two. And this is one of the steps towards making sure you don't get deplaned. Not that there's a great chance that that'll happen to you. Not in Ark Royal anyway. You can kind of consider that our pre-drop against the Alba. And now we're going to come in here and we know this guy's still got some time left. I really don't know him. I'm not trying to pick on him, but it's going to become a problem. So we set loose some torpedoes there. They were fully aimed, so they will actually converge towards him. That'll make that both easier to dodge in a sense, but also if he's kind of at a standstill, which is what he was at, it'll be really hard to dodge because he won't have any speed. We do land 2 torpedoes. Now we're going to use this island to try to shield some of the AA that's going to come at me and see if we can't start a fire on the Alba. We do hit it only 3 times, which is a bit surprising, but it looks like our friend in the backfield has managed to put out the fires. We don't leave ourselves enough room, but thanks to the quantity of bombs there, we do land a couple hits, manage to start up a new fire, and we're coming back around. And this time we're going to aim kind of on the backside, because if we can kind of straddle the 2 sections there, we might get 2 additional fires. So this is kind of the bread and butter of what Ark Royal does, and as you can see, we're already up to 45,000 damage, cooking away nicely in a very literal sense. That said, we have lost both the east and the west flank, which means in terms of geography, we're disadvantaged in terms of where we can actually put our carrier, so we're kind of getting pushed away into the corner. I'm going to go ahead and line up on the Alba. It looks like one of my torpedoes hit a rock, which is admittedly my fault. You will notice sometimes when I play this, I don't fully aim the torpedoes because honestly, sometimes it's best to have a little bit of wiggle room if you only need to hit with 1 or 2. In that case, because cruisers are so much faster than battleships at this tier, I wanted the spread to be a little bit wider. It happened to take out the middle torpedo, which was, again, my fault, but we probably didn't hit it by that much. And it would have been nice. It would have been nice. Because we might have been able to get him with 2. But you will notice if you fully aim and then somebody slams on their brakes, if they have engine mod, then there's a very good chance that all of your torpedoes sail in front of him. And now we're paying a little bit more attention to the mini-map to see that there is a destroyer up here, and that's not good for me. He's relatively quick, and I do not want him coming down here to say hello to my carrier in person. Looks like he's happy to blaze away at our battleship, though, and if he's going to be out in the open and spotted, we'll go ahead and see if we can't give him a little bit of damage along the way. I'm taking off again with my bombers, mostly because I am still mostly worried about that Jervis, even though he is technically further away. And I'm looking kind of at the fuel gauge. I might not have the fuel in order to get 2 strikes in on him. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and turn towards this battleship. Instead, people who like to play Diseva Provincian will note that usually HE bombs do a ton of damage to those hybrid carriers. You saw we landed 9 hits that just shattered off of his deck, so even though we got the fires, we did get sort of burnt, on the actual damage. That's terrible. That's terrible. Anyway. You can see we still got constant damage coming in, and I am running out of space. It's starting to think we might end up going back towards the corner, but I'm just going to try to make myself thin. Now, I am pretty sure Connecticut can Citadel me through the back. I'm just not sure that Connecticut can reliably hit a narrow target. So I'm going to take my chances on that if I do happen to get spotted. And we're going to line up on Connecticut to hopefully get him out of the game here pretty quickly. In spite of the odd camera angle, we do land all 3 of our torpedoes there. I am surprised that he is not dead. And this is a lost cause, but we'll see if we can't spread out this far enough to get a shot to go in his direction. Doesn't look like it. That's fine. That's fine. The battleship is down, and we've got a little bit more breathing room now that there's just yet another battleship, and the Jervis still over there. But we should be able to get 2 or 3 flights off against Jervis. He's at about half health. And if he's not sitting in smoke, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to be able to punish him. You saw we had a pretty well aimed set of carpet bombs early in the game. And then a not so great set of carpet bombs a little bit later. These are fully aimed, and it looks like he's traveling in a straight line. And that's fine with me. That's fine with me. Looks like he's getting some love from other folks on my team, and we get another assist. If you do a lot of damage over time stuff, particularly in ships like Ark Royal, you will get a lot of those. And there we have another 2 fires on Huga. And at this point, actually, Huga would have been a good choice to use some of my torpedo bombers on. But if you let me, I'll be happy to fly carpet bombs all day.
Victory is in sight.
And there we get a little bit of reward for doing exactly that with the Witherer and the high caliber. And it just keeps going. Another assist. And then it looks like there's just the one guy on the far side of the map, which we will fly towards. You can see we've only got 9 kilometers left. He's further away than that. As long as we start our run before it hits 0, we're going to be able to finish it. If you were really concerned about planes, which clearly at this point I am not, then it would have been a good idea to pre-drop some of these, because this is just going to give him chances to shoot down more planes, but that's fine. That's fine. And for a moment, you see we thought about using torpedo bombers. The torpedo bombers I'd have to come along the side or shoot at his bow, considering they have similar ranges. That said, we'll just keep the fire thing going. We're built for fires. We're gonna make the fires, and obviously this is just ticking down to the end of the game. And we're gonna get, looks like, probably one last drop on the New Mexico. Most of those are off of his bow. We did hit once in the superstructure. You saw, again, 9 shatters. That is the downside to Ark Royal. Everything else about this ship is still pretty nice, and particularly not having to fear destroyers quite as much as any of the other flat tops. In any case, that'll bring us along to the end of the game. We get a nice even 129,000 damage. So, closing thoughts on Ark Royal. Well, if you can pick her up for free, it's certainly a good deal. If you're considering buying her, I'd say she's still a contender for most effective all-around carrier at the tier. She's the only carrier that can consistently hit destroyers with her bombs, unless you count the Soviets. She sets the most fires of any carrier out there, regardless of the target, and in spite of the speed of the torpedoes, the way that they converge can make them some of the most useful against certain targets. She is going to feel the size of the map on those small maps that Wargaming, and as far as I can tell exclusively Wargaming, think are fun to play on. And I think you're still moderately more likely to get hate mail in this carrier than you are in other ones. But if you're a carrier player, there's a pretty good chance that you enjoy a high sodium diet anyway. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Ark Royal. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you on the next one. Which strangely seems like it's going to be a carrier.